it actually makes me pretty upset to hear people say, well, you don't look like you have anything wrong with you. And I'm like, what? Like, I don't even know how to respond to that. How do you look like you have something mentally, I don't want to say wrong, it's nothing wrong with you, but how do you look like you have a mental disorder? I just don't understand how you can even look like you have one or you don't have one. So that's where a lot of my bullying pretty much came from, especially in high school and everything, because nobody believed that I even had any problems. They always thought that I wanted special treatment, when really, if you have anxiety, you kind of tend to hate having to have special treatment. Just letting you know, because it draws more attention to you and you feel even more different than you already did before. One example was when we had this project in class where we had to give presentations, and I've done it before, the presentations, and it was just awful. Like, my face would turn so red that it was like purple. And I've actually had a teacher say to me before, like, listen, if you weren't able to do this, you could have just came to me and let me know. And I'm like, no teacher has ever said that to me before. Which that still to this day meant a lot. Even though it took me getting laughed at and made fun of like crazy that day in class, that was fun. But still, to have finally had a teacher acknowledge that there was actually something wrong and that I wasn't like everyone else when it came to speaking in front of a class, it really did make a huge difference. And it still makes me wonder, like, I wonder if that particular incident, even though it was so humiliating for me that day, still thinking about it, it's humiliating. But I wonder if maybe that gave that teacher some perspective, and now maybe since then he has maybe took that into consideration with his next classes after me. But there was one class in particular that we had to give a presentation, and I just could not do it. And at that point, I had meetings with the guidance counselor all the time, and I had a note that, you know, could I please just stay after school to give the presentation to the teacher one-on-one instead of having to present in front of the whole class, because I had tried so many times before and the bullying was just insane, like insane. So I had a note and it was asking to please allow me to present after school one day, just one-on-one with the teacher. And people found out, because of course when the whole class but one person goes up and presents, they're gonna question, why didn't you go and all that. And they find out, of course. So they thought that I was getting special treatment, amongst other things, because of staying after class to present. And if I got A's, forget it. Like, I was an honors student and all that. I had high honors, all that. But I was always told that I had special treatment, and if they were given the special treatment too, that they also would have the straight A's. What no one understood though was that while I was still struggling in class to try to be as normal as I could and do everything else that the whole class was doing, I was still managing to fight my anxiety, fight my depression, fight everything going on in my mind to try to be present in the class, to actually learn and know what I was doing. And I was still getting good grades. Granted, not always, because sometimes my mind went so crazy. I really failed some stuff, a lot of stuff. And at the time, you know, I didn't really think it was anything except just sucking at the class, to be honest. But then after talking to the guidance counselor and talking to teachers one-on-one, it was like I did understand this stuff. I was learning. I just couldn't fight dealing with what was going on in my mind and using my brain at the same time for everything that I had already learned, and to put it on paper or out loud, whatever it was that we had to do, I was unable to do it some of the time because of how bad the anxiety actually got. So for me, with school, it just ended up working out so much better to be homebound for me. And it got to the point where that's when my suicidal thoughts were so bad, was in high school, because I just couldn't take it anymore. And when you're dealing with the anxiety and the depression, I mean, when you have the bullying on top of everything, and still you try to just deal with it as best you can. You know, it is hard to do, but when you're trying your best and your hardest and you're trying so hard to get these good grades and deal with everything else going on, when you have people judging you for your good grades on top of everything else, it makes you feel like you're not supposed to reach your best potential. It makes you feel like to make everyone else feel comfortable and stop judging you and bullying you for what you're dealing with, but yet still coming out top while they're failing. Just think about it. I'm not saying that these people who were bullying and just giving the hardest time ever weren't going through things, because I know they were. Now more than ever, looking back, I know they were struggling with things, whether it was their home life or they just weren't very good at school. They felt the need to take it out on everyone else who was doing better than them. And in this case, it was still about my looks too. And it wasn't like, I don't mean to come off any kind of way about my looks, because believe me, still struggling here with feeling like the ugliest thing ever, trust me. But anyone would say it to me who was on the outside looking in, especially the adults. They would always tell me they were jealous of me, which I still don't believe. But when I think about it, like home life and my life prior to high school and everything, anything these people found out about me, I could understand why they would have possibly envied me. But I didn't see it because of my looks or anything like that. Not even because of my grades, because I just felt like if you apply yourself, you can get the good grades. Because even dealing with everything else, well, some classes, I was still getting A's even though I was struggling, because I knew I needed to get those good grades. And it just seemed to me like they were never applying themselves enough, they were never into it enough. So I never took it like they would be jealous of my grades and my home life and everything else. And I was quiet, like I was pretty quiet, shy, and it was always a problem if I either spoke or didn't speak at all. Like, you could never win no matter what you did. And I also remember there was this one girl who, she had plenty of struggles on her own, and at this point I was so psychologically unaware of everything. I just couldn't understand any of it. But now looking back, I do. So this is where silent forgiveness comes in, just for you, not for them who have had something to say to you. But just, you feel like you can finally forgive them looking back when you understand a little bit more about like why maybe they talked to you the way they did or acted the way they did towards you. And I'll just say a little bit about this. I just remember that I was told about taking pictures with each other in class one day, and I was told, well, maybe if you wear makeup tomorrow, then maybe you can get in the picture with me too. Whether you want to admit it or not, things like that can follow you through the rest of your life. So many things like that follow me through life. Comments like that, insults like that, whatever you want to call it. Because I still feel like I can't even so much as just go in the car somewhere without putting makeup on. I do now, but it just is hard to think about, like, if I was in high school and I was being told that I had to wear makeup just to be in a picture, like, it just messes with the mind so much even still today. I used to be very, 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 very bothered by things like that, but once I realized that it's all psychological, and I actually just feel really bad for these people, because while they made my life absolutely miserable, I know that they made me feel like that to somehow make themselves feel more empowered. And I just feel really bad for them. I really genuinely do, because I feel like they just didn't know how else to deal with what they were going through, how to cope with it. And they weren't sure how to deal with someone managing to do a little bit better than them in school. And I was the kid that was sick all the time. I never got like a cold, the common cold. I never got that. I always got crazy illnesses. Like, it was always pneumonia, bronchitis, just everything. You don't even understand. I was always sick with something crazy, and still when I would come back to school, I would be all caught up on my work. I would still have good grades. and they just didn't know how to take that. They saw that as, oh, she gets to skip school and she's still getting A's. Like, how's that possible? It has to be special treatment. By my junior year, I had the worst bully, whatever you want to call it, that I had ever had at that point. It was so bad that I felt like I could not do it anymore. Like, if I had to keep going back to that school, that I would just rather honestly die. That's how I felt. And it got to the point where I was telling my parents, family members, therapists, everyone, I'm like, listen, I have to be honest about this. If I have the choice between going to this school every single day or death, I would honestly choose death. And I really did mean it. I had the worst mental breakdowns about it. I constantly was just obsessing over the fact of just being gone and not having to deal with it anymore. And I realized, looking back, I'm sure there were probably somehow other alternatives. I think it just honestly depends on each person individually, but for me, I had tried everything. I had tried the guidance counselor. I would go in there for any breaks between classes that there were, or anytime we weren't in a classroom, I would be in the guidance office. Like, that was it. I tried everything I possibly could just to avoid as much of the bullying as I could, but it got to the point where I had tried everything, and the only option was either I'm done at this school, or I really felt like I was going to end up killing myself. It's really hard to talk about because it just puts me right back where I was at the time, and I'm trying not to get like, but when you feel like anything compares to no longer being here, and you would choose that over the situation you're in, you just always have to remember that no matter what, eventually it's going to be over. You just have to find the right alternative for you. You have to realize that there is another option, no matter what it is. For me, it was I had to go homebound. I just could not take it anymore, and that changed my entire life. It changed my whole outlook on life too, because it felt like this mandatory thing that I had to do. It was either I did that mandatory thing like I'm supposed to, or I have to end it all. Like, I felt like there was just no other option. But then to find out that there was another option, and then I actually excelled in that alternative, it just changed everything. And if anyone right now is dealing with high school or school in general, bullying, anything like that, I can't even imagine if you're dealing with it right now, because I just remember for me, I would be on the floor crying hysterically, just like almost ripping my hair out, just trying to think of a way that I could honestly just end it all, because I knew that I had to do anything possible to avoid going back there. And I am just so thankful for the alternative. And I know that for parents it's so hard. I really can't imagine for parents to hear your child say that they want to kill themselves after you've given them life. I can't even imagine. But I can't speak for parents or the kids who are going through this. I can only speak from my own experience, and I know that my parents wanted to do anything they could to help me get through, but still by going to school every day and just dealing with it and getting through it. And I know for the kid, it's hard because you feel like your parents aren't relating to you, that they're not understanding, that no one could possibly understand unless they go. And honestly, in a way, that's true, because I know a lot of people would tell me like, oh, I've been there, it's high school, that's how it is, girls will be girls, you just have to deal with it. And that's when they would tell me they're just jealous, keep doing what you're doing. And that always made it so much worse for me, because it always felt like they were downplaying what I was going through. Honestly, while people have gone through bullying for years, obviously, a very long time, bullying has been a thing pretty much forever. But unless you've experienced it yourself, you never actually know how bad it truly is. You really don't, because like the things that I was going through, I mean, no one else was even dealing with that while I was there. Yeah, there was other bullying going on, but nothing like what they were doing to me. And my situation just felt so different because I was the only one who was openly diagnosed with anxiety and depression. I was the only one. Everyone else, I'm sure they've had their diagnosis, but no one talked about it. And this was almost 10 years ago, really. So, I mean, times are different now, I know, but... And then I did have a mobile therapist at some point too. I've had a lot of mobile therapists, but never to the point where I had anyone go with me to school. I knew that would just make it so much worse. And they would even tell me that. I've had therapists say to me, well, we could send you a therapist with you to school and they'll go with you to your classes, but they tell me it's just going to make it even worse on yourself if you do that. So I'm a young teenager. I'm not exactly going to be up for that and say, oh, let's just do it anyway. Let's just give them more to talk about. No, I was trying to avoid that at any cost at all. Like, I was like, no. Well, you know, it probably would have actually helped me, but I wasn't trying to get the extra judgment going on, and that's what the therapist was telling me. That it would just make it even worse. I just really feel bad for those people who bully everyone else, who judge everyone else, who are so quick to make assumptions about everyone else and say that they don't look like they have a problem and that they are getting special treatment and that that's why they're doing well in life when you may not be. And I just hope that those people are able to, instead of putting their energy into all of the judgment and just hatred, I hope that they're able to turn it into something more positive for themselves. Because if I don't think of it that way, then I will just drive myself crazy and keep reliving the past over and over again. So what I found to help me now today is just realize how bad I truly do feel for them. I genuinely feel bad. And I do hope that they're all doing better in life now. I hope that they raise their children to be different than they were in high school. I hope that their children aren't on the other side of bullying either. No one deserves it, no matter what. To this day, I've had people say to me like, oh, we haven't talked since high school. And I'm like, we never talked in high school either. I'm like, your friends all judge me and everything. And they'll be like, yeah, but I was never one of them. And it's like, you may not have been one of them, but you never did anything to stop it either. And I understand there's all kinds of fear of judgment around that too, but sometimes it's just so hard to accept and move on and realize that as we all age, we do mature sometimes. I'm just kidding, but you know, we all do mature, and a lot of us have a complete change in perspective, and we can understand a little bit more about what other people might go through, their mindsets, just realizing that there's actually not a look behind having something mentally, you know, I really hate to say mentally wrong because it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, but just to be a little bit different than everyone else and have a mental disorder that takes over your life every day. They just don't understand it, and it's okay that they don't understand it. Not everyone has to understand it. But after all of this, I realized that people just don't understand, and they're not open to understanding either, and that's okay. They don't need to understand it as long as I understand it, and I understand that I have something going on in my mind that they don't understand. I'm sure they have something going on that I don't understand too. We're all human. We all have our own struggles to deal with, but I just really hope that people can stop putting so much judgment on everyone else and just realize there is no look. You don't have to have a look, a stereotypical look, anything like that to have something going on in your mind. You don't. And people need to understand that and be more aware of it. And I just really hope that this bullying stops. The most important thing to take away about bullies for right now, because there's just so much content, I don't want to make this too long of a video, but just know that no bully is worth your life. It's not. And while I was trying for a very long time to just deal with it any way I could, keep going back to school, deal with it, when I felt like it was either have to kill myself to get away from them, you know, it just, no one is worth it. And there are resources, there are alternatives, there are other options. It should never, ever, ever come down to the answer of being to end it all. There are other ways to end parts of your life, not your life, just parts of it. And if that's school, if you need to become homeschooled, homebound, cyber schooled, whatever it might be, if you feel like it gets to that point, there are always resources and you can always go and talk to someone about it. But never, ever, ever let it mean taking your life.